Hey, everyone. Let's start healing. I'm Adrienne Murchison, and welcome to episode 59 of the Let's Start Healing podcast. We have more in common than we think, and what we have in common can change the world. So, this is a very special episode in the sense that I'm hacking myself. I'm bringing you a test episode of a new podcast called Tapping In with my good friend Teresa Cuellar and I. And this is just a test episode where we are talking about something that will keep you stimulated. We're talking about relationships, and there's always healing. When it comes to relationships, there's always healing that can be done. If not now, then later. So we're actually in this particular episode talking about relationships through the Netflix film Malcolm and Marie. We're joined by two really good friends. And when I bring you what we recorded, you'll learn about all of us. You'll learn about everyone on the episode. But this is just a sampling of a podcast that Teresa and I are thinking about bringing to you all, and I would love your feedback. In this episode, we're talking about relationships, but as we will share, we intend, if we go forward, to talk about all kinds of things. So we're hacking Let's Start Healing for a bonus episode. This is episode 59 of Let's Start Healing. And please let me know what you think. So here we go, tapping in.
I thought we were done fighting.
Don't be sensitive. This isn't a fight.
Yeah, right.
It's not. It's an observation.
Oh, you don't want to go there.
Why is that?
Trust me, you don't.
Why is that?
Because even if you do, you're not thinking clearly.
I think I'm thinking clearly.
Trust me, you're not.
Well, I do have a slightly masochistic streak.
But you're not dumb.
Oh my God, thank you.
Don't be a fucking brat.
And don't fucking patronize me and tell me I gave up something when you know damn well your work is all that you have time for and all you fucking care about.
Oh, so you gave up a fucking career in acting to be an emotional fucking support dog.
Fuck
I
you,
get
Malcolm.
it now. All right.
Fuck
so,
you.
because you're scared and you didn't
Fuck
want it, you
you.
never wanted it. Because
You know
were
what?
too
You
scared
are
to try
fucking
and fail.
ugly inside.
Oh, fuck you. Remember when I met you, you were a fucking pilled out disaster. You were barely 20 years old. Couldn't hold a conversation without nodding off or passing out or breaking down. Don't act like for the last 5 years you've been so fucking in life that I fucking forgot the old you. Of course I want you to have a life, Marie. You know why? Because I'm terrified that if you don't, you're gonna hang everything on mine. And when, God forbid, I forget to thank you at a fucking movie premiere, you come home, you start a fight. And by morning you're drinking on Xannies, trying to fucking cut your wrist with a pair of fucking nail scissors. Stupid motherfucker.
How do broken relationships work? Sometimes they figure it out and move on and grow and say, God, remember when we used to fight like hell? Remember when you, absolutely. It happens. To me, the realisticness of it. And I don't think enough people want to be honest about that.
Wait, can we go back to borderline abusive? I guess, Lynette, and I'd love to hear what Teresa has to say, but like, if that was your daughter, you don't think that that's abusive? And when you say borderline abusive, I think of like, if that's my daughter, especially, like, to me, that's absolutely below the belt abusive.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to Tapping In, the Teresa and Adrienne podcast. I'm Adrienne Murchison.
And I'm Teresa Cuellar.
And this is our debut episode, and we've got something juicy in store for you. But we want to tell you a little bit about what we are going to have going on from here going forward and what this podcast is going to be about. And we're going to be tapping into life, to culture, to everything that's going on in the world that really we just feel like talking about. And it's just going to be a kickback, laid back conversation. And we'll be talking about, some things that are really burning up in the news sometimes or in media.
Yes.
Teresa and I are in the Metro Atlanta area, and we have been good friends for a long time. And we're going to share a little bit about how we connect. But first, Teresa's going to tell you a little bit about herself.
Okay. I originally moved here to the Atlanta area about 12 years ago. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I lived in the, let's just say, Baldwin Hills, the jungle adjacent area. I attended Fairfax High. I went on to attend San Francisco State University. I lived in the Bay Area for all of my adult life. I primarily worked in the banking and insurance industry. I have two beautiful children, Maya and Jero. I have 4 grandchildren and 1 on the way, should be here in the next couple months. And then for my 50th birthday, I decided to do something wild and crazy. Well, I moved to Atlanta. Had never had any desires to move to the dirty South, but I guess my Sagittarian nature, kind of kicked in, and here I am. Every day I am perplexed and shocked by some of the views that I come across by my friends and neighbors. But, I have that California aesthetic and perspective. So I think this will lead to some very interesting conversations with Adrienne. What say you?
I think so too. Some listeners might know me from my podcast, Let's Start Healing. I work in media. I'm a journalist with one of the major newspapers here in Atlanta. And I'm from Buffalo, New York. I went to college here in Atlanta, and I stayed for several years and then moved to New York City for 10 years. But I have been back in Atlanta for 21 years. It feels like I just came back yesterday. So there is definitely a dynamic of being a Northerner and living in the South that I'm finally becoming more comfortable with. Although my grandparents on both sides are from North Carolina. So I definitely have Southern roots. And I'm not married. I've never been married. I have no children, but I do have nieces and nephews that I'm very close to. And family is really, really important to me. You know that about me, Teresa. I guess I'll share more along the way. I'm a Taurus with a rising Libra and a Leo moon. And so I do have all of those things in me. So people, when they see me, they see Libra characteristics. But that's how I show up. I show up with some kind of visual for people. And so they have a certain impression, but I'm a Taurus. And so I'm grounded, and I definitely have a lot of resolve in my thoughts and opinions, but I'm very open-minded. Spirituality, as you know, is a very central part of my life, which is why I started Let's Start Healing. And why don't you touch on a little bit, and I'll chime in about why we connect.
Well, we both have a very good friend in common. Yes. Jazz Jones, who is the head of Mad Miracles. And so we were attending a brunch that she was having. And I just remember that Adrienne was telling this story about how she had had this back pain and how it allowed her to realize that this was connected to some other things in her life. And so out of all the people that were attending that day, she really stood out to me. So a few months later, Adrienne had her annual Christmas party, and our mutual friend invited me. And ever since, we've been, thick as thieves. We've traveled to, we went to Malibu because Adrienne is an avid competitor in triathlons. And we just have had a really great time connecting, because I think she's East Coast, I'm West Coast. So no beef here, we agree to disagree. And that keeps it interesting.
Often people think I'm from California. Sometimes they think I'm from the Midwest, and I love California. Like I could live there tomorrow and be completely happy. But it's so funny because we are similar in so many ways. And then I had mentioned the other day how I think of myself as an open-minded person. I know I'm open-minded, but you are more open-minded than me. And sometimes I'm just like,
Well, I was in San Francisco and really kind of wrapped my head around that summer of love, even though I was still in elementary school then. But, there were some lingering effects of the flower children that kind of stuck with me.
So this new episode, we're going to be talking about one of the many movies out right now that are so good. We're talking with two other friends, Lynetta Chanel Duncan and Tanya Guzman. Lynetta lives here in the Atlanta area too, and Tanya lives in upstate New York in Rochester. We are childhood best friends, and now I'm not even gonna say how old we are now. So and Lynetta and you are like sisters to me. So we have a really nice, juicy conversation about Malcolm and Marie, which is streaming on Netflix. And so that allows us to get into what we thought of that movie and get into relationships a little bit. And we would have loved to have a man participate in the conversation, but the day that we recorded, no one was available. All the men were unavailable. But we can have
Isn't that usually the case?
We could have a part 2 on that conversation, but I want to also mention that there's just other movies out like Judas and the Black Messiah, which is such a hot conversation right now. I happen to see that pretty powerful movie. There's also Sylvie's Love and of course One Night in Miami. By Regina King. We could have talked about any of those movies and we may even get to them, but what else? What else, Teresa?
Well, we do have other interests other than movies, but we really do bond on watching old black and whites and, the various actors and actresses. So that's just one of our common interests.
Right.
But in later discussions, we will cover some of our other interests.
We certainly will. We certainly will. So, Teresa, anything that I'm forgetting before we get to this conversation we had?
No, let's get into it.
All right, let's tap in. All right, here we are, take 2. We're talking about that movie, Malcolm and Marie, and we're going to go around, and Tanya is in Rochester, and Teresa and Lynetta and I are in Atlanta, Georgia. Tanya's in Rochester, New York. So Tanya, take it away. What do you think of that movie?
Okay, well, Malcolm and Marie, I watched on Netflix last night. I had no idea what this movie was about. I found it very boring and I had a hard time staying engaged with the movie. I am sure that there are nuggets and things you could take away from the movie. We could look at character development, but just as a movie overall, I just was bored. So you can take elements and themes from the movie, like, parts of it where I felt were abusive. You could put that in the movie, parts where it just has to do with communication and effective communication and couples and, how they go in and out of love. And you could put that in the movie and make it where it's engaging. So that's where I felt the movie failed, where it just did not hold my attention. And actually I could relate to her because I felt like I have similar characteristics. If I get mad, I will tend to internalize and I will hold on. Like I won't just come out and discuss it with my husband. I'll hold on to it for a minute, or I might say, yeah, no, I'm fine, when I'm really not fine. So I can relate on that from that aspect. I could relate just as a couple and, fighting. I could not relate to, or hopefully, I know that people go through things, but, the way he went in was really abusive to me. And, I know people go through that, but at the same time, I felt like it could have been delivered in a movie where, you could really learn from it. I don't feel like I learned anything. So that's kind of, how I'm going to start out.
Lynetta.
So while I wish I'd probably watched the movie first alone, as opposed to with my husband, because we had a lot of dialogue after the movie, and a lot of it that we agreed on, absolutely, actually. But I felt like the movie it wasn't great to me, but it was not bad to me. It was what I think maybe they tried to do was give some type of depiction of what heated argument relationships could possibly be like when you have really deep unresolved issues. I think she had she had actually clearly a lot of them, but I think he actually had some too. But I think it did, or tried to, I don't think it did a great job of balancing, reflecting the love they had with the issues that were going on and how they resolved that. But I think there were parts of it where it did show their kind of love, regardless of how we feel about it. And then it's like a roller coaster. They are up and down. I knew there were parts where she just had deeper things that were not resolved still, even though they may have talked about it or screamed about it, and then went back to maybe trying to connect again, or manipulate again. I think there was a lot of manipulation in the movie. You can see that, like after he ripped her to shreds. And I agree, Tanya, it was like complete abusive discussion. Yet he did say, and yet I do feel he was hurt. And when you're hurt, you say things to hurt the other person. I think that's real. I certainly have had discussions or heated discussions with past friends, and I know we've gotten just as heated in those discussions. So I do think it can be some people's reality, regardless of how we see it. That can be some people's reality of how they deal. And maybe 5 years or whatever, or whenever we come into a type of heated discussion, maybe there's something we might see in ourselves that may have come from that, or maybe it's a tool to use to show us how not to act. But I do think there was a whole lot of abusive discussion there between them, and abuse is abuse, whether it's physical or verbally. I think it was more on his part, especially at that point. The manipulation was definitely on her part, but they were manipulating each other. I just think to me, it was more real than what I sense a lot of people are getting from the movie. I just see it as it's real.
Teresa?
Malcolm and Marie. I was looking forward to it because of John David and Zendaya. I think they are both rising stars. And so it was, I was excited. And I did read some of the reviews before I watched it. So a little bit of it I was sort of aware of and prepared for. But first off, most people know I'm a very visual person. So Laneta, that house I was in love with.
I agree. I loved it. Yes.
So as they would pan, across the room, I was right up on the TV. Screen, trying to
walk around some more. Let me see the other back part.
Yeah. So it was so visually appealing to me, and they're two good-looking people. So I, didn't mind seeing them, just the two of them, on the screen for the whole duration of the movie. So I was prepared for that. I also enjoyed the cinematography aspect of it being black and white, and that it was shot in sort of a grainy kind of texture. So I thought we saw a lot of close-up detail, just the texture of their skin, but it was emotionally draining for me. I have lived that. I have been around that. And I was like, oh, wow. In fact, someone I know said they watched it 3 times because they saw themselves for the first time. They didn't know that while they were communicating with someone they loved, they actually looked very ugly. There was a lot of passive aggressiveness on the Marie's character. There was a lot of insecurity on the part of John David's character, Malcolm. But I thought
that if you could make it to the end, you could kind of see, wow, so this is how life is. A lot of ups and downs. But what can we do better as far as communicating our own feelings, our own wants and desires? And if there's someone that we can be in relationship with that will respect what we want and respect us as human beings, then yes, move forward. But I think it was an opportunity to see that we should, or let me make it personal. I should always state what it is I want. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I would probably give it maybe a 7, because it did hold my attention, but it was just a lot of the same thing over and over and over.
So, well, first of all, Tanya, I didn't know that you hadn't heard of the movie before it came out or anything.
Well, I've seen it. I mean, I've seen it like, across the Netflix banners, but I didn't know like what it was about.
Well, I had been looking forward to it for, I guess, a couple of months or maybe even longer than a couple of months, because I had read that they were going to be making this movie because it was an easy way, it was an easy movie to shoot during a pandemic. And then I think maybe right the day it came out or the week that it came out, I read that what's his name? Sam Levinson, the writer and director, I read that it was his experience. He was accepting an award and he didn't thank his wife. And so that inspired the story. I don't know that that's their story, but, just the idea of, writing some kind of story like this. But I don't know. That movie, to me, it was very triggering. I related to her also. I have been verbally abused, emotionally abused in different relationships. It's taken me years to move past that, to get past accepting that kind of behavior. So when I was watching that, first of all, I was like, what is the point of this movie? I didn't understand what the filmmaker was trying to accomplish with this movie. I wanted there to be some point by the time the movie ended, because am I just watching somebody just get verbally abused, emotionally abused? And I watched it right before we got together just now. I tried to rewatch it, but I didn't have a whole lot of time. And I was getting a little bored, but there were some points that I wanted to get to again. And I had talked to Lynetta last night. I had talked to her husband, and he had made a comment that I felt like I agreed with him, a lot of the points he was making in the conversation, but he had also pointed out that she had pushed his buttons sometimes, as in not you, Lynetta, but Marie had pushed.
I do push his buttons, but yeah, I know you did.
That Marie had pushed Malcolm's buttons sometimes. And I just felt like I kind of disregarded it. But when I watched it again today, I saw where she did that, a couple of times. I acknowledged that she pushed her buttons, but in no way, shape, or form is it okay to speak to somebody the way that he was talking to her. I mean, it's just not okay. And that's why I have a problem with that movie. What is the movie maker's point in presenting this behavior? And she's an addict. So, she's an addict in recovery. What is he trying to tell the world? And I say this knowing so many people in recovery. And, I know Teresa does as well. I just did not think it was okay. That bathroom scene, not only did he beat her up terribly with those words, but then his point was, you're never going to beat me in an argument like this. I'm always going to beat you in this kind of an argument. And then he says, why does she keep subjecting herself to this? Well, why are you inflicting this? Because you can? It brought back so many moments for me in past relationships. And I would hate for somebody to look at that movie and think that that's what love looks like and that that's okay, because that's not love. I understand, getting into an argument and saying things that you don't mean and, in the heat of an argument. But in the heat of an argument, you do not degrade somebody that you love. That's the thing. That's what it was for me.
Maybe he was trying to, for addicts, show that you can still overcome, even though this wasn't a healthy relationship, right? There were very little healthy exchanges, but she was able to rise above to an extent. She wasn't using, so that was a positive.
Right.
And I am totally in agreement with everything you said about what love should or should not look like, and perhaps that's what the takeaway is for people to see, that this isn't what it should look like. If anything, I would show my daughters this is not what it should look like, and if you see something like this, run as fast as you can. That would be a takeaway from me. So I understand the material, but again, I'm just coming from the foundation of, if I'm bored, I'm bored. However, no matter what the content is, no matter what the delivery is, if it's not keeping my attention, I think you can always grab some nuggets or some, discussion from it. But I just was not entertained, or I was just bored. But I get the whole exchange.
When we look at, again, the dynamics of their relationship, there's no doubt that the things that he said to her were very aggressively strong. I'm going to say, and you guys can hate me, maybe borderline abusive. Here's why. Some of what he said, and it's fine, y'all can beat up on me. Don't get me wrong. Anyone ever said that to me, we're going at it. That's a fact. But again, it doesn't mean what he said. Some of it didn't need to be said, whether he said it or a counselor said it. He said
what?
About her and the depth of what was going on inside of her, and her not facing some things. And I don't remember now, that's why I want to watch it again, but her not facing some things and relying on him to do it for her. Now, mind you, he relied on her too. The whole running around looking for her when she went off for a moment and all of that, that showed how much she went off on him and told him, don't you dare come at me. You need me. She came and went into that and revealed some things to him too. But some of what he said to her while in that bathroom, still she needed to hear, and she knew it. That's why she laid in there for a moment, crying and thinking about it, and then got up and went in her manipulative self to sit outside when he's smoking the cigarette and things like that. Now, mind you, how he said it, no, absolutely not. Maybe did he need to say it? I'm sure it was like glass, like cut or nails on a chalkboard. I'm sure all of those things was it. The dynamics, again, of their relationship was such that, I think we've all said it here, we've all had some broken relationships. And in broken relationships, and theirs was broken, let's be honest, communication-wise, all of that, it was all there. But we've all been in them. And we all had pieces of it, his part and our part, that's just ugly. And it needed to be brought out. And we've learned from it, and we become better people. That's how you become better. It's things that I recognize within myself, whether that person said it to me or a counselor, or I just learned over time learning myself, that was ugly. And how I was a part of like me seeing myself in her or in him, whatever it was. That's why I agree with you, Adrian. At the end, what was it for? What's the movie for, Tanya? That, like, what is it about? I think we're left to figure that on the end, like the whole going up when she's on the hill and it goes off that way. Do they get back together? Do they make it work, or do they not make it work? I don't know. How do broken relationships work? Sometimes they figure it out and move on and grow and say, God, remember when we used to fight like hell? Remember when absolutely. It happens. To me, the realisticness of it, and I don't think enough people want to be honest about that.
Wait, can we go back to borderline abusive? I guess, Lynette, and I love to hear what Teresa has to say, but like, if that was your daughter, you don't think that that's abusive? And when you say borderline abusive, I think of like, if that's my daughter, especially, like, to me, that's absolutely below the belt abusive. There's a way to say things, and there's a way to express your disdain, whatever it is, without going in and being abusive. Now, not to say it doesn't happen. Absolutely, it happens. But
I have to be more specific on the lines, because I just feel like some of what he said, again, whether he said it or someone else, it needed to be acknowledged.
Some of it.
And as I said, how he said it, absolutely. No, I agree with you. I wouldn't want my daughter talked like that. But does she need to recognize some of what he said? Would some of that have been true for her to come out some kind of way, for it to be acknowledged some kind of way? And that's the only thing I'm saying. I do feel like he was down and dirty. I don't know if you could have been, well, you probably could have been any dirtier. He wasn't, thank God, wasn't in her face and wasn't going off like that. Thank goodness. Then they've taken the movie to another level. But that's what I mean by borderline, I guess. It was the parts that needed to be acknowledged out of what he said. How he said it, completely agree with. I definitely wouldn't want that to be told like that, because I would have been like, that's something I don't think you're going to have problems forgetting. Like she said, to tell me things like that, that's going to live and stay in my head. The girlfriends he slept with, and how, I think maybe actually it was in the part or whatever, in the bedroom and whatever, however he's sleeping with this chick he's talking about from his past. No woman wants to hear that. We already probably know these things. We think we're going to be the best girlfriend this guy ever, has ever had. Like she said, she brought all that out. But look at how the things that they were able to get past after those conversations, that again, if they decide to make it work after that hill, if there's a part 2 or whatever, then look at what they've had dealt with. Look at the trash they were able to pull out and deal with.
But you said that's the thing she needed to hear. Did she really need to hear?
I agree pretty much with what Laneta is saying, that we're not actually able to be transparent with each other. And this is not just male-female relationships. This is even friend to friend, that a lot of times that we hold this stuff in and we don't know how to positively express what we're feeling, because we've sort of learned, and I feel like it's sort of our more masculine side, to really fight and try to defend our positions. I think he should have been telling her certain things about the making of the movie, because she really wanted to be in the movie, but then she didn't. Like he said, why didn't you audition like that, when she grabbed the knife and he thought she was going 51-50, but she was actually trying to show him, oh, I can act. And he's like, well, why didn't you do that? So I felt like it was showing that we need to stand up for ourselves, because those arguments didn't start that day. He was there when she was going through her overdoses and so forth and so on. They had seen this deep nitty-gritty side of each other, but they didn't know how to talk to each other and say, I'm with you because I see something that you might be able to help me with. I want to be in a movie. I want to be an actress. How can I help myself? And he should have told her that I appreciate your story. You are a muse to me, even though there are other influences. But as far as this abusive aspect, I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but it really kind of bothers me when I hear people arguing, because I feel like our arguments are kind of on a different level. Now, maybe it's just because I haven't been around white people arguing, but I know that it seems like a lot of times Black men look at their women as if they are their actual physical enemy at times, and they will say some things, and yes, it's abusive, but they probably saw their mother and father or family members talking in the same way. So that's why this young woman I know,
it doesn't make it right.
No, it doesn't make it right.
Right, but yeah.
And so she said, I saw my mother, but she said her mother was actually the Malcolm character. So even though it was male, female, just that primal reactions. It's not like they were, thinking top of the mind, from the very front, being creative, because they were creative people, but they were actually down in the trenches, reacting as if there was something super scary in the room, because they were really trying to hurt each other. But then when they had the scene where she says, "You should have thanked me for," and she went down the whole list, and he knew, oh shit, she's right. She's right. She is calling me out. And have I just been oblivious to all this? Yeah, probably so. And I thought that was an interesting scene, because there was so much verbal abuse, but I think it goes on every single day, and it's just sort of generational. And I don't know why men aren't taught that your counterpart isn't your enemy. You may not be in agreement with what she's saying or doing, or you may not understand, but it's not like you're dealing with someone on the football field, or you're in a ballroom brawl and, you're arguing over, I don't know, football or whatever. So that's what I thought that the writer was trying to just show us the slice of life. It didn't start it didn't start at that theater when he forgot to thank her. That had started from their childhoods, because he talked about his upbringing. So it wasn't like he was poor. His parents were professionals. He had gone to college. So it wasn't like, he was from a lower socioeconomic background and, grew up in the hood and this, that, and the other. No, you would have thought he would have known better. But Adrienne, what were you going to say about the abuse aspect?
Well, I related to her because I understood her mindset. I understood her thought process. I think that just because a person comes off strong, because she had some kind of mind to me. She had a very strong mind. She had a specific way of thinking, but just because she came off that way doesn't mean that she wasn't vulnerable. I mean, she was obviously very vulnerable. She was in recovery. She went through all that she had been through, and he's bringing it up, and that she still has wounds. And first of all, Leneda, you had mentioned the bathroom scene and how he was saying things that needed to be said. And I don't understand why you think he said things that needed to be said. In the end, he said that the movie was based on her. So all that stuff he said in the bathroom wasn't true. So what did he say that needed to be said? I did get satisfaction in the end when she started going through her diatribe, of how he could thank her. And one of my problems throughout the whole movie, he never broke in terms of letting down his facade. It was just all ego throughout the whole movie. He never showed the real him until the end, until she went through everything at the end. And then you saw his true spirit come out a little bit.
I like that, Teresa. Well, she mentioned his background, and you said, Teresa, that you would have thought that he would have known better. And I think that this is a good example of, I think he did know better. And just because you know better doesn't mean you do what you know you should be doing. And I think that people could take away that, this could happen. You could have come from a family with $5 or a family with $5 million. So I like that you brought that point up, just to show that, he was educated. So I'm pretty sure he knew better, but it happened anyway.
I think that when people go off on us, I think that a part of us is processing, is there truth to this? Is this valid? Yeah, at least I do it. I try to consider, is this valid, even if it's hurting? And I think that both of them did that. She said some things about him that I felt were true. And she was hurting him when she said it. She was hurting him. But I felt like, and he even said to her that she was hurting him. Why would you want to hurt me like that? But I felt when he was listening to her that he was processing it because it was true, but she didn't have to say the thing about him being mediocre and not really taking risks and things like that. And there is a way that she could have said those things to him without it being hurtful. But I didn't think that even what she said rose anywhere near to the level of the things that he was saying to her.
I agree with that. It didn't rise to the level of what he was saying to her. What we're expressing is not whether we like the character and like how they did what they did or didn't. That's not what we're talking about. What I'm talking about is, again, how I saw what the movie was trying to do. I think, like you just said, remembering back when it was almost as if there are parts of what took place of this. You can kind of dissect it right after the bathroom, the kitchen, making the macaroni and cheese, that argument, what happened after that. Him sitting here eating it's like funny parts in it too. I thought that was hilarious. The whole macaroni.
He was eating the mac and cheese.
He's just killing that mac and cheese, right? I think he even went and put more on there. I was like, dang. Like she said, and she was smart, like Tanya was saying, because she was spitting when she like, and then you got the nerve to do it while you eating the mac and cheese while I brought you, she just let
that
the
was
girl
true,
wasn't stupid. She's a smart girl. But he even acknowledged that. He acknowledged her wit. He acknowledged how you are better than this, even in the bathroom. Let me go back to my point. You can dissect the arguments that they had. And in all those sections, he went after her, she went after him. He went after her, she went after him. And then in the last part, like 3 parts of that, right? Again, not saying we like or don't like a character. We're talking about what the movie was trying to do. And in each of those, you just said too, she tried to hurt him, he tried to hurt her. She tried to hurt him, he tried to hurt her. That's why it was exhausting for us, because we had, though it was an hour and something long movie, or maybe an hour, I don't even know exactly how long it was. It felt like we were in it every bit as long as they were, from the 1 o'clock when they got home, because at one point he says 1 o'clock, to probably 3 whenever they laid down, or 4 whenever they laid down. We felt like we were in a 3-hour long fight, right? And I just think out of all of those sections, things were said, as ugly as however they were said, from whatever ugliness it came from, because his ugliness and how he delivered that to her in the bathroom, again, his upbringing, like Teresa was saying, he came from a privileged whatever, she mentioned that. That's how he's dealing with her, from that angle. So he's coming at her from that kind of probably upbringing. I don't know if I call it spoiled, but we can call it spoiled or whatever it is, and whatever it is, I don't even know how to describe that. So I just think, but we can see he got something out of what was said. She did too. He got some out of what was said. And I just think that they grew at the end of this exhausting situation. By that morning, he learned ugliness about himself. She learned stuff about herself that they can take and be better people. That's all I'm saying. And I think that's what the movie was trying to do.
I think that, to what you were just saying about his upbringing, I think, and I'm only saying this from experience, so maybe I'm wrong. I think that he was condescending to her. That's a sticking point for me, condescension. It's a pet peeve. Okay. I think that he treated her the way he treated her because of his insecurities, and for me, not how he was brought up, and maybe he's insecure because of the way he was brought up. Now that I say it.
Yeah,
but not because I don't think it's like I'm privileged. I think that he was insecure because he needed her and she was smarter than him.
He didn't want to recognize it.
Right. Mm-hmm. She doesn't need him. She just doesn't know that she doesn't need him.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I agree with that, Adrienne.
But that's kind of what he was trying to bring to her, really. And I mean, the kind of pulling out of her in the bathroom. You don't even know what strength lies within you, and you can't win this.
Everything he said in the bathroom was a lie, though. He was lying because he acknowledged.
Hold on. I don't agree with that. Not true. Then Adrian, she had not, she,
in terms of the movie being based on her.
but that was the bathroom argument was more than that, though.
It was.
I mean,
It was.
it was more than that. She laid in that bathroom when he walked out. I think, I don't know if this is kind of what I got, and felt the way she did because a lot of that crap was true, and she knew it.
It's true. Her actions from when she was a drug addict, those things, that's what he was bringing up. You know, how she went out, she was going to a meeting and then she slept with another man. I mean, he's drudging up all her shit.
But Adrian, the point is, what he did, we're talking, I did, because this is where we disagreed. But the deal is, again, see what else came out of that discussion and out of that argument. We're not saying that was right in how we did that. We're saying some of what was acknowledged out of that she took, and she probably could take that and realize, okay, yeah, that is me.
I think that where Adrian and I probably both disagree with you is that it did not have to go to that extent. Or if that's the outcome that one is searching for her to realize and do some self-introspection, like, okay, you know, I can acknowledge that. He did not have to go in the way he did.
There's no disagreement there.
Abusive, I'm going to still call it abusive, to get to that same outcome.
And
there's no disagreement there. We all agree on that. We all agree on that.
No, I think it was abusive. You think it was borderline abusive.
Okay. I explained the borderline is just because, again, I said abusive. I'm only hesitated because of what had to come out of it. But it still equates to how he said it was abusive. I just felt like what was in that abusive thing needed to be, you know. Let me tell you something. I remember just sharing a personal experience. I'm transparent. I don't mind. One quick thing. A situation with me and an ex ended really bad. The conversation ended really bad with him ripping me to shreds, profanity, all of that, ripping me to shreds. Did I need to hear some of that? I sure did. I never went back to that again. Some of that stuff I acknowledge of what I was doing. Did he need to say it like that? Absolutely not. Did it make me better and stronger? Hell yeah. But that's what I'm trying to say. That's all I'm trying to say. Yes, it was abusive. Absolutely. Okay, the delivery was abusive. Did I need to hear it? Absolutely, I did. I'll bet my next paycheck on it. I did need to hear it, Tanya.
So no, I'm with you. And maybe she did. I can't really say, you know, we can only, you know, approach it from our own lens, and that's your lens.
That's right. That's why I'm saying some of it's real.
But
yeah, and I think a lot of it is real.
They said in the movie, when he said that she slept with somebody when she went to a group, you know, a 12-step group, that tells me, okay, she's in a 12-step group. She's been in recovery for some years. So I'm assuming that she went back to her 12-step group. As a part of that process, you are looking at yourself. You are digging in, you know, to all the things you've done, the things that he's saying to her. To me, from the lens that I'm looking at, she already knows that stuff. So what is he doing? He's throwing her back in it. He's just throwing it back up in her face. She already knows these things. It's not, to me, what you just described, you know, from your experience, because she's already been through it.
But maybe he doesn't know what that all involves. I mean, you know, you're educated on it. You know, if he doesn't, and you know, I'm still keeping my same side, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I got it.
You know what I'm saying, lady? But wait, can we give her a big hand clap for that 10-minute thank yous? And she still had made that macaroni and cheese. I'm like, girl, good. Not me.
Do you guys see her at all as a victim? Because that's what I'm looking at her as.
But you're dealing with her vulnerability. You're staying there, Adrian. I mean,
I am. But that's why I'm asking you. That's why I'm asking you guys that question.
Yeah, but she wore her victimness to her disadvantage, because it wasn't like he needed to take pity on her and just give her the part to the movie. Because she had been an addict and had experienced a lot of what he wrote about, did not mean that she had to do, I assume, a half-ass, what do you call it? When you audition.
Because he asked her, why didn't you do that at the audition?
Exactly. So I felt like, a lot of that passive aggressiveness comes from feeling, like a victim. And I don't know about the 12-step program where, they talk about that, where that enters in, but she wore that. It's like that was her favorite coat to put on because
what was Teresa?
Her victimness.
In what way? Like, can you give me an example?
Like as soon as he would, like if she didn't feel like making that macaroni and cheese, she could have said, you know what, I'm tired, I'm going to bed. You go ahead and, if she wanted to kind of ponder the fact that he had forgotten to thank her, but instead she made the macaroni and cheese, and it's like, but she's, being passive aggressive.
But that's who she was. She was able to recite thank yous for 10 minutes. That was her. She did everything for this man, so to me, it wasn't about wearing victim. It's like that was her world, That's when I said I wouldn't have been me. But that's all she knew. That's, that was her.
I know, but I think she could have left. Not at that moment, but I'm just saying somewhere along the way, she chose to stay. But then was she going to punish him because, like we thought that she was getting ready to, do something like try to kill herself. I kept thinking when she was in the tub, oh, she's gonna just take herself out.
I thought that was an audition in the kitchen with a knife. I thought it was totally acting. Sure. I never thought she was gonna take her life at all.
Why don't you think, Adrienne, she auditioned and showed them at the audition what she showed him in the kitchen?
Because I think that I don't see her as passive aggressive, and I hate people I don't hate people. I hate passive aggressive behavior. I can't stand it. I don't see her as passive aggressive. I see her as having an insecurity. I relate to that. I relate to, the exterior that I saw as strong, but having, insecurities as well. And so if she felt insecure and vulnerable about, this is based on my life. This is something I know I could do, but that's not my wheelhouse. And maybe she didn't have the courage to say, to trust him or to think he would be compassionate if she brought it up.
What gave her the courage to do it in the kitchen?
They're at a different point. She's mad. Just because I might feel insecure, or she as a character might feel insecure doesn't mean you don't feel other emotions.
No, I get that. But she was able to perform that. He said, it's in you. You have that ability. And it came out of her when she got angry.
And him knowing that, and if he loves her, why not suggest it? Why not say, hey, maybe this won't work, but why don't you give it a shot? Why don't you audition, for the role? Why not just be upfront?
And I agree with Adrienne, because the word that I was thinking of was insecure. And the reason, she didn't initially audition, she said that she didn't feel like he wanted her to. And I think that just assisted with her going back into her shell. And why she didn't audition properly like she should have.
But why didn't she show up for herself? In a strong way. Yes,
that's
was
a process.
A young lady, and that's what I think. Where I say I don't know if it's passive aggressive. I don't know if it's insecure. What I saw, but I felt like she wasn't standing up for herself. A lot of women, they acquiesce. And they'll say something like, well, rather than me pursuing what I really want to do, they will allow their man to go ahead and pursue whatever he's going to do. She's going to support him. But then years later, she's going to say, well, I didn't follow my dream because I was there supporting you. But there was no reason why she couldn't stand up and say, well, I'm going to audition over here with John Smith or whatever, but she seemed to just hold back and was hoping, I know, Adrian, I've told you this before. I think a lot of times women especially think that men read their minds and know exactly what it is.
Absolutely.
But she wanted him to read her mind.
I think she just wanted him to ask her. They're in a relationship. He knows what's up. She knows what's up. And, I probably have done this in my relationship where, you should know by now, I like pink roses, and I think that that's what she was feeling like. She was not to read her mind, but they've talked about it. It's her story. They love each other, and she wanted him to bring her forward.
But she thought he knew that was her project too. But I think he said something like he didn't know that she was that, vested in the project. I think he just knew that she was a sort of a muse, but he had other, that he wasn't just, watching her and writing down her life and made a movie out of it. He took, just like the writer of the movie, took what happened with him by forgetting to thank his wife. We don't know if the story went like this, but it was an idea for him to jump off with a story. So what do we take from this, or do we take anything from this and move forward, or just because I thought it was good enough in the sense that it could be a college course on in sociology or psychology, because it really showed how people function together, but not really knowing the other person or knowing how to communicate what it is they really want.
I agree with that, Teresa. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
don't fall asleep.
Tight. You don't fall asleep if you don't fall asleep in class. If I could write the end of the ending, I would let's maybe all do this, write the ending or whatever. I don't know. Just an idea.
That's a great idea.
I would say on that hill was a conversation, because we don't know what happened. I don't know if he was turning. I couldn't even tell which way. Was he turning this way and she that way or what? But I think that I would have him saying, this was a hell of a night. I said some crazy, you can edit this part out, shit that I should not have said to you, but I love you, because he said it several times there. At one point, it was over dramatic, really. And I learned a lot about myself that's ugly. I also learned that I do need you in my life. That I'm so, again, he said he was sorry that morning, but that I don't say I'm sorry enough. And she could say, well, I have a lot of insecurities. I should have told you in the car, it is bothering me that you didn't thank me. I should have, told you I can't audition for this part instead of having this other chick do it that, I don't really talk to or whatever. I should have, whatever it is. I do remember when you were there with me, taking me to rehab and, fighting with me to get up when I'm sleeping with your friend. Come on now. We forget these other parts of the movie. Again, sleeping with your friends. There's so much in their relationship. All of this could have been said on that hill, and it could be, but we're going to move on from here, resolving to never, ever hold things back in ourselves. We're going to tell each other how we feel. We're going to talk about it. And if it gets to where it's this point where we're saying things to hurt each other again, we stop. Something like that. That's how I'm going to write the end of that movie. So that's what I mean by, to me, this movie is real. Period. I'm out.
And you go, Tanya. How would you do? Just make a new movie?
Tanya would start all over.
The end would be, we're going to the drawing board.
We're talking about the end, though. So
yes.
Okay. And I echo a lot of the sentiments that Laneta has already expressed. However, it does have a different ending. Again, I'm thinking of this like from my daughter.
Kicking his butt for abusing him.
So, they both apologize for things that they have not previously acknowledged. He apologizes again for not thanking her because that's huge. However, after those pieces are done, they both admit that they need time apart. Again, if it's my daughter, I'm hoping she runs for the hills because I don't feel he's changing anytime soon.
Yeah.
So, they split amicably, and she goes on and becomes this well-renowned actress. Everything that she really wants. And they become better people apart than they are together. Bam,
Good.
drop the mic.
Bam. I like that one too.
Teresa, do you mind if I follow up? If I
Sure.
go next?
Go ahead.
I feel a lot that way. I think she leaves. She's gone. He has to have some kind of therapy or help or something. He has to go through some time before, to me, he is a different person and he is not behaving that way. And I brought up something I think to both Teresa and Tanya, separate, obviously, conversations, that I had an awareness, and this is what I would wish for Marie's character. And that is that sometimes in a relationship, it can be so dysfunctional that, at least from my experience, a person is focused so much on the dysfunction that they forget that they're not even happy. Like, this isn't even what I want. And so my rewriting the ending would be that she would realize that that's not what she wants. It's not only that this is not acceptable, the way that he has treated me, but this isn't even what I want. I'm not even happy. Bye.
I actually think that's why she was on the hill, probably having those thoughts of, I don't need this. I could do fine by myself. Yeah.
He would say, or they both would agree, wow, that was a hell of a night. And they both kind of share a cigarette. And then he says, well, I know from now on, I need to write out everybody I'm thanking when I win my Academy Award. And she says, and I'm going to get me an agent because I know I award too. And then they kind of just, hug each other. I always like a happy ending.
Me too. That's why I went there.
Teresa, she says, That's awesome.
We all have great endings.
All right. So again, let me know what you think about tapping in and the conversation that we had, and what you think about the concept of this podcast, tapping in general. Send me an email at letstarthealingpodcast@gmail.com, and you can listen to all of our regular Let's Start Healing podcast episodes on traditional podcast platforms. That's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and our podcast YouTube channel. So remember, we have more in common than we think, and what we have in common can change the world. Until next time, let's start healing.